Welcome to episode 1 of the Costa Rica Travel and Living podcast. I'm your host, Adam Baker. I'm a British expat that's been living here in Costa Rica since 2006. So I know a thing or two about travel and living in this part of the world. Please don't forget to subscribe to wherever you get your podcast to never miss an episode. And if you're watching on YouTube, let us know if you have any questions or are interested in future topics by letting me know in the comments box below, and I'll get straight back to you. This week's guest is none other than Anastasia McCulloch. She's a senior travel consultant at Costa Rican Vacations. You might have seen her on previous podcasts affiliated with Costa Rican Vacations, or even on our own sub-channel, Frog TV. So she knows a thing or two about traveling and living in this part of the world, and she's been here since 2009. So without further ado, let's jump in. Hey, Anastasia, great to have you on our very first Costa Rica Travel and Living podcast. How's it going?
It's going very well out here. How are you this morning, Adam?
Not too bad. Can't complain. The weather in San Jose is nice, a bit blustery, but still pretty hot. It looks very sunny behind you. Whereabouts are you coming to us from?
It is. It's a beautiful day out here. I am in Playa del Coco up in the Guanacaste region of the country. Nice.
Well, it looks very sunny and very tropical indeed. Thanks for being our first guest. For those of you who don't know Anastasia, Anastasia's been in the country for years, 2009. So coming on 14 years now. It's a long time, right? Time absolutely flies. Been in travel and tourism an awful lot. Done a lot of work with us, Costa Rican Vacations, Frog TV, traveling around and about the country. So you're a great person to kick off the podcast where we're talking about everything, literally living and traveling down here to Costa Rica. But to start, Anastasia, can you tell us a little bit about your very beginning? What brought you down to Costa Rica initially?
Sure. So Costa Rica was never really on my radar, nor was the idea of living abroad. It really came out of a very spontaneous move from my mom. I had finished college in the US and I was working a couple jobs, and, they're like, what are you going to do with your life? And I kind of jokingly said, maybe I'll just go teach English abroad for a year, just to take a year off and explore a little bit. And a few weeks later, I had flights in my inbox. My mom was like, pack your bags. We're going to go to Costa Rica. She had never been here before. I had never been here before, but she heard good things. She heard it was safe. It was relatively close to the United States. It's a pretty quick flight. And she just thought that would be a great way for me to come down, see if it was something I wanted to pursue, and also for her to check it out, and make sure that she also felt good about that situation. And we came down and had a blast. I mean, I was here for a little bit less than a week, and I absolutely fell in love with the country. I wanted to stay. And so within a few weeks, I found a job and I moved all of my things, and I came down here with a suitcase and a dream.
Wow. That's very different to a lot of people's story, or especially perhaps people listening and watching,
right?
In the sense that maybe people are thinking about retiring or coming down to Costa Rica much later in life. For you, it really flipped side, that your mum gave you that opportunity.
Yes.
It was. I'd like to ask people, what inspired them or why Costa Rica. But do you know why your mum chose Costa Rica, other than the proximity?
She had coworkers who, one of them was a Costa Rican gentleman. Several of them have been to Costa Rica before, and everybody just said, "Oh, it's such a lovely place," and "Oh, if your daughter, she's young, and maybe don't send her too far away. The flight to Argentina is a little rough. Those kinds of things." So, so that was why we started here, and I do kind of, in a way, wish I would have traveled a little bit more before I found Costa Rica, because maybe I would have seen some more areas of the world, but it just touched my heart in such a huge way and completely changed my life.
Sure.
The plan was never to be here for so long. I thought I was just going to do a year teaching, and that was it. And once that year was up, I really wanted to find something else to do here. Teaching just wasn't sustainable. And so I found this job on Craigslist back when Craigslist was still a thing.
Yeah, 2009. There you go.
And yep, 2009. And yeah, the rest is history. I mean, I've been with the agency now for 13 years, and my mom loves it. You know, she gets to come down all the time. And my parents are now actually looking to sell their home and move down here as well. So they have their house on the market in the US.
Oh, wow. So you're in a perfect position to talk about the actual
some of the challenges, some of the things that they're
down
facing
here to Costa Rica. What was it that connected for you so specifically in those first couple of weeks about Costa Rica that you loved so much?
Well, I think number one, the people, people were extremely friendly, and they were so proud of their country, and they wanted to just help you experience everything here. And, you know, oh, be careful with this, and oh, this is where you should eat, and oh, use this taxi. You know, I mean, they were just very willing to help, and I thought that was really lovely. I came, you know, from the U.S. where we didn't really know our neighbors that well in our cul-de-sac, you know, it's just, you're a little bit more enclosed. In here, just the warmth of the people. I mean, I got invited over to the home of somebody who worked at the hotel to have coffee with their mom and their kids and stuff.
Super friendly, right? It's a super warm community.
I mean, the sense of community was just really lovely. Obviously, it's gorgeous. You know, I mean, a lot of the country is really naturally beautiful. I'm drawn to that. I'm drawn to the outdoors. I like to explore. Everything felt so new.
Yeah.
And it was just a really welcome change for me at that time in my life. And it was a huge challenge. And I really liked that. I liked not knowing Spanish, and I liked not knowing where I was and trying to figure out where to go. Because back in those times, there was hardly any Skype or internet or Waze, you know, all these things.
For sure. The technology was growing with us whilst living abroad.
Yeah. And so trying to find the bus schedule it was exciting though. I mean, it brought a new sense of excitement and meaning to my life, where I kind of felt like I was on autopilot in the United States. So
I know that you speak Spanish incredibly well, virtually fluently, wonderful accent. How important do you think it is for someone thinking about moving to Costa Rica or even traveling here if you speak Spanish? Do you need to speak Spanish?
I think initially it's a good idea to have some very basic Spanish. I don't think that it's necessary, with a little caveat. It depends on where you're planning on living or where you're planning on traveling. If you are in some of these areas that are tourist areas, I mean, they're, you know, the beach towns and up by the Arenal volcano and some of these areas, a lot of people speak some degree of English, but you will have a much better experience, and you will connect with people on a different level if you are practicing some Spanish prior to coming. If you are going to go to the grocery store or go to the bank, or, you know, you kind of have to talk.
Banks especially, yes.
Yes, yeah. Or just avoid them entirely. Yes. Banking in the US, but
if you can internet bank in Costa Rica, try and do so, because going to a bank is just plan 2 hours of your day always.
We'll talk about those challenges.
Were there any in the first few years? So it's a two double question here. Did you know you were going to stay longer, and when did you think you realized this might be for me in the long run? And what were those first initial challenges that you faced when making that decision to stay here?
Okay, so I really did not know that this was going to be a super long-term thing or a forever thing. Probably until I met my husband. I mean, I was always like, can I really keep this dream alive? You know, it was like, this is just too amazing. It was like, I don't know. Will I ever need to go back? Will something happen that I can't make it? You know, and things just kept working out. You continue to work harder. You figure it out. There are some times when it gets hard, it gets lonely, especially at the beginning. I remember after my first year, before I got this job, when I was finishing up teaching, I was ready to swim home. I mean, I was literally somebody get me out of here. I don't belong here.
What was the issues? Why did you feel like that?
I think part of it was because of the language barrier at that time for me. I had a hard time making friends. I was a young teacher who taught adult kids, I mean, I was 22 and a lot of them were like 18 to 25. I didn't want to be unprofessional and like hang out with my students and stuff. So I guess that's probably more common here than it is in the United States. But at the time, it didn't feel like the right thing to do because I wanted to keep my job, and like, but now I know that culturally that is really much more acceptable than I thought it was. But, I mean, trying to make money, trying to pay for an apartment on a teacher's salary, trying to figure out where to go, not having a car. I couldn't get a cell phone at that time. I mean, there were a lot of challenges then that are like non-existent now. But I had a rough time adapting at first. And then once I got into planning vacations, my life really turned around. I was so thrilled and I was able to see so much of the country and meet so many amazing people. Costa Rica runs on tourism, right? And when I was in college, actually a weird little connection, when they asked me my first year of college, what do you want to do with your life? And I said that I wanted to write for Travel and Leisure. That was like my big dream, write for Travel and Leisure. And I got kind of close. I got featured in Travel and Leisure like 2 months ago.
Good, nice, yeah, fantastic.
Come in full circle. So after having this job for a little while, it was like, wow, I just want to stay. I want to stay. I want to stay. I met my husband, and he's Costa Rican, and I married into a wonderful family here. And it just flowed. I mean, it worked out so that I could stay and I could continue to produce and support myself, support my family. I now have a child. So I think we're staying here. I think the more that we see, I hate to say it, but the more that I see the way that things are moving in the United States, the more prone I am to staying here. Because I really like the traditional aspect of Costa Rica. Again, it's very safe. It's very friendly. The sense of community. It's a small country. Like if you do anything, people know about it, right? Like like somebody's going to know about it.
Sure. Famously quite small, just over 5 million in population. I was going to ask you about that. What are some of the unique cultural differences? You're from the US. So what are the, the visitors or future people thinking about moving here can they expect?
So I think there's an initial skepticism about people, but then it breaks down very quickly that people want you to come out and like go to their house for coffee, and people want to invite you for dinner. And I think just that really openness and inviting nature that they have here. At first, it's a little off-putting, maybe not off-putting, but at first it might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable because that's just not the way that it is. And
the personal space is very big, like in big Latin American towns.
Personal space is a big thing here that they don't care. Are crammed into that bus. You are crammed into a room, like elevator, whatever. There is no bubble. But it's just the way it is. It's not disrespectful. The way that people talk at you when you don't understand Spanish can sometimes be a little like, oh, what's going on? And they use their hands a lot. And you're like, I don't know what's happening. But it starts, they will work with you, they will negotiate with you. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. It's been a really long time. So
I mean, of course. Think back. One thing I wanted to ask you, so I obviously you lived in the city in San Jose for a number of years before you married and moved to the coast up in Guanacaste with your new family. What are some of the pros and cons of living in the city against living at the beach?
Very good question. So living in the city, I think it's just, for me, living in the city, that's where my husband's family live. So having family close by with a new baby was amazing. That was really helpful and useful. And they, it was so enjoyable that they got to spend their time with the new grandbaby baby. I think that, schools, you just have a lot of options in the city. You have a lot of options for entertainment, for shopping, movies, malls, like if you like that city stuff, hospitals, doctors, all of the amenities, all of the comforts, of the US can really be found in San Jose. Like I'm gluten-free, just for instance. there are way more options of gluten-free kind of stuff, like cupcakes or gluten-free beer, things like that that are in the city that I don't necessarily have as much out here. But as far as my son, I think that there are so many parks and just like fun things for kids to do that are not necessarily outdoorsy things for kids. So leading into the benefits of living at the beach. We love the outdoors. I mean, we get out every single weekend and we go
for sure.
Hike a volcano, jump off waterfalls, mountain bike, surf, whatever. Like we're just all over the place and everything's relatively close by. I love the fact that there's no traffic. Like I sit at a stop sign for 30 seconds and I'm like, oh, traffic jam, It's like, really?
The traffic in central San Jose, even the Central Valley, where lots of the population is really confined, is pretty crazy.
Yeah, it can take up a lot of your life.
Yeah. If you can work from home and you're living abroad here and you are staying in the central region, it's not a bad thing. If you don't have to face the traffic jams in the morning or in the afternoons, but dear me, I can imagine that's a huge plus being out there, being by the sea. Was there anything that surprised you when you were starting raising a family with your little boy that you didn't necessarily know about or wish you had known when going to the beach and starting raising a family in Costa Rica?
There are a couple things, I wish I would have had a better handle on what it meant to have a baby in a public hospital.
Okay. And why did you say that?
Because it was an experience that I kind of knew what I was getting into, but not in a way I didn't really have the total scope of what that meant. Like I was in a hospital room with 6 other women who were also having babies or had brand new babies. Yeah. And so there's not much privacy. Things are very loud. You've got babies crying. You're trying to put your new baby to sleep. It was a lot.
Yeah.
And my mother came down and it was a lot for her too, because there's no comfy chair for her to sleep in. She's on a desk, like just in a plastic chair.
Yes. For sure.
Like, what did you do here? But there is great private medical care too. At the time I thought, oh, it's free healthcare. It's the social medical system. Like, let's just do this. I wish I would have known about that. I think that would have been, I think the next time I'll do things a little bit differently.
Super interesting point that you mentioned, because obviously, unlike the States, there's the public healthcare system here, which is very good, but it certainly has its downsides at times for a developing country. That's always worth bearing in mind. Obviously, being from the UK, we have the NHS, where it's a lot bigger, developed country, and so on. Yeah. I recently had my daughter as well, in 2022, and we decided to go the private route with one of the local hospitals. And I remember chatting to you about it, and another friend who has 2 kids, and she did one private and one public. And it does seem like there are pros and cons on both sides, but I do hear that slightly stressful situation where you don't have those moments of comfort or privacy. And in our case, for those that are interested, and if you do think about the private section, the private option afterwards, it was amazing. The whole process was it was like booking a hotel. The timing in the morning. In my wife's case, we did go down the C-section route. So, but it was very, very safe, massively, wonderfully controlled. It was like staying in a hotel room, super relaxed. All the meals, beautiful view of the mountains here in the Central Valley. All the doctors were lovely, very safe, wonderful procedure, and very, very cost effective, whether or not you have insurance. So that was another thing that I couldn't believe. Yeah. People ask, compared to the States, maybe the whole thing can anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 US, like really reasonable with how much treatment you get, different doctors, anesthesiologists, surgeons, and whatnot. So it's good. It's a good piece of knowledge to think about that, especially if you're having your child here.
Well, and something else to consider is that although you lack the privacy, I got phenomenal care. I mean, I do feel like I got really good care. They definitely did their job. I always felt like I knew what was going on. I ended up having an emergency C-section. My son came out with club foot. He was all twisted up. Yeah. So like we had a lot. I mean, that was a lot to take in for any new mom, but then also just having the support of the hospital to to say like, hey, this is fine. We're going to, you'll see a doctor soon, They'll give you a little report and they'll kind of tell you where to go from here. And so after that, we did end up going the private route for his initial treatments and, all the casting and all the other stuff that we had to do there, which was very cost effective. I mean, we completely straightened out his feet for like a total of, I don't know, maybe $3,000.
Wow.
Whereas something like that in the US would have been a substantial amount of money.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And he's great.
When talking about medical services in general, I've noticed that a lot more hospitals, even private hospitals, are also opening in Guanacaste. So if you are thinking about the beach in your region in the north of the country, you've got some really good treatment around the country, not just public.
Right. Yes, we absolutely do. There are multiple hospitals in the Liberia area. There's a great one right near Reserva Conchal, moving down into Tamarindo. There are plentiful options for hospitals up here.
Was it a relatively easy decision for you to go to the beach once you had your little boy, your little guy, and think about raising a family by the coast? Was that part of the decision, or was it just you wanted to escape the traffic?
No, it was a consideration, definitely. Now, being a new mom and having all of that family around, that was also something that it was like, and being a working mom, that it was really helpful to have that. But we were in the middle of the pandemic, and my job went from being really, really fun to being like a nightmare. And so it was like
getting vacations when everything is shut down. Very challenging.
Gosh. It was rough. And just having that new baby and just hoping, the world's not going to end on us or something. So my husband, found us an amazing deal because obviously everything out here was empty at that time. And so he just said, hey, I think this would be a good idea for us. Let's just make the move, and we came out, we didn't know how long we would be here. We didn't know how long the pandemic was going to go on, like a lot of things. There were just a lot of unknowns, but we figured, what the heck, let's just give it a try.
Yeah.
And now we're going on 3 years, that we've been here in the same house, and we just love the area, the people, the lifestyle. I mean, it's so much more relaxing than San Jose, but I also love the mountains. So who knows where we'll end up, in the coming years. But for now, we're very, very happy out here.
We're talking about geography in the country. Obviously, you've been a travel consultant, a senior travel consultant, a travel professional for years now. What are some of the key areas, your top 3 locations? If I'm coming to visit for the first time, maybe I'm thinking about moving to Costa Rica, but I want to see 3 key areas before I do so. Where do you recommend?
I think for a first-time traveler, the Arenal volcano area is really very special.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you 4 areas because I do think that another inland mountain region would be important. So you could do something like a Monteverde or a San Ramon, Saregre, like some of these other areas that are highland, coffee.
A lot cooler. Yeah.
A lot cooler. Yes, much cooler climate. And very natural and rural, or, the Guanacaste beach area, which has a lot of benefits because it is quite developed. You do have the international airport up there that's really convenient if you're going to be traveling back and forth a lot, or the central and southern Pacific. So like your Manuel Antonio, Uvita, Quepos, Paco, those areas. But I do think it's important to talk to people before you come, either get into, Facebook groups or read some books, try and kind of whittle down a list of places that you think you might want to live, and then try to fit those places into an itinerary.
Yeah. That makes sense, to get that experience before you do so. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Yeah, no, great points about moving around. I always recommend to any travelers, if you're going to come down and you are thinking about moving and you've heard great things about Costa Rica, for sure, come down and travel. It doesn't have to be a high-end vacation, but do take your time to explore the areas, do a bit of research online, ask family and friends or agencies like us, do your research. There's a lot of groups on Facebook as well. And then take your time. If you can travel for 2, 3, 4 weeks, especially if it's a trip as important about you thinking about moving to Costa Rica, as opposed to just coming down on vacation, right? And then get a feel for the area. Explore the areas. the climate, whether, medical healthcare is important to you, access to amenities, supermarkets, banking, all of that stuff. So important to come down, try it out yourself, get to know the people. I mean, over the years that we've been here, I think we've seen a lot of people come down, they think it's right for them. 6 months later, they go back because it's not for everybody, right? You need to figure out the pros and cons for yourself. Are there, in your opinion, any specific popular areas for expats, especially from the States, like any bubbles that pop up?
Yeah, there are a ton. Yeah. There are a whole lot of expats up here in like the Tamarindo area, here in Coco, Ocotal, Flamingo, Tamarindo, Nosara. I mean, way down the coast, you get to Santa Teresa, Montezuma. I mean, all of these places are very popular for expats. Atenas, Escazú, the San Jose area.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see more people moving to the Caribbean too. I've seen a lot of people who have started to make their way over there. I think that's a really up and coming area. Uvita, a little bit south of Manuel Antonio, just exploding. Ojochal. Yeah, there are a number of regions that are very popular among expats.
Oh, and we could do a whole different episode or a whole podcast, if you want, about the different regions in the country, because I always feel like you see different audiences as well. Maybe the expat communities living down in Santa Teresa, Nosara, Malpais, it's a lot more chilled out. It's a lot more surfing, holistic yoga vibe. If you're in the Central Pacific, you've got a lot more fisherman party lifestyle down there in Jacó region, right? Uvita, again, is a little bit more chilled out. Different Envision festivals. It's a yearly festival. Right. You come down, have a big party on the beach. Whereas you talk about the Caribbean, where I remember when we started 15, 16 years ago, that was a lot more European, a lot more Spanish, Italian markets with that Afro-Caribbean vibe that it's got going on. So it is interesting to see how that is exploding. Yep. No, for sure. So we've discussed a little bit about the regions, about you raising your family by the beach, the pros and cons. You've been in tourism a long time. Obviously, we've survived the pandemic, a few years ago, and the bubble boom of traveling now, back to getting out and about. These digital nomad visas are an exciting movement, so you can actually travel and work from abroad for an extended period. Costa Rica was one of those, I think, who initiated one of that option initially. How do you see the tourism industry maybe in the next 5 years or so, in your opinion, when it comes to travel and then the bigger picture about immigrating abroad?
Sure. I think it's hard to say what's going to happen in the next 5 years. I do think that we are going to see a lot of longer term travelers, people who come here for a month, 2 months, 3 months. I think we'll see a lot more of that. I know that I have a lot of people who return to Costa Rica year after year to continue to explore the country, to see new things. So I think we're going to see a lot more of the repeat traveler, because during the pandemic, so many people didn't want to go to a lot of places. There were many areas of the country that were much more strict with their rules, or they just weren't safe, or they had been hit really hard by the pandemic, causing crime and like lower wages.
It was difficult.
Unemployment, all of those things. I mean, Costa Rica was very fortunate, although it was tough. I think we positioned ourselves very well with, a lot of the outdoor adventure. Like, you could still come here. We were one of the countries to open up much earlier than other areas of the world. And so I think people felt confident to come here. They felt safe here. They felt like they were going to be in an area where they just didn't have the same concerns as being crammed into a museum in Europe, So, so I think as far as like recovery and moving forward, I think Costa Rica gained a ton of exposure during the pandemic. And I think we got a lot of people who came here for the first time. So I think we're going to see a new little boom of repeat travelers, of people wanting to come down and move here, coming down to build here, do business here. So I think that we'll just see a lot of longer term tourists and families. I mean, people like a lot of people, all the pandemic babies, all the COVID babies that happened. I think Costa Rica lends itself to such a great destination for families with young kids. And so I just think we'll have a whole new wave of people coming in here that maybe Costa Rica was their first trip abroad or their first trip post-pandemic. And so they're starting to then I'm seeing a ton of repeat business anyways. People who
it's a really good point. Well, I know we've discussed that you're probably going to be here for the long term now that you've got your family. I guess a question for you, now that you're helping plan possibly your parents moving here full time. Obviously, they've been here for a long time with you. Why didn't they come sooner? And what will your first tip to your parents be? What is the feedback you're giving them about living here?
Sure. So I think my dad is, USA all the way. Like there's no place like the United States, that's always been his way of thinking. And he is like from Parma Heights, Ohio. I mean, he's from like the middle of the country. He stayed in his house from the time he was born until he was out to college. I mean, he didn't move. It was just not a thing. My mom moved around all over the place as a kid. She didn't have any problems with moving around. So I think it was just hard for him to take in all that he knew about my experience and some of the struggles that I had and think, how am I supposed to do this, 60 some years old and like learning a new language and so forth. So I think it was just really intimidating for him. My mom's been ready to move here for years. Like she was ready.
The good life.
Yes. Yeah. She was ready to do it a long time ago. But I think he also in the back of his mind thought she won't stay. She'll come back, and then what do we do? She leaves and then who do we know,
Very good point.
But now, I mean, they've come down here a lot and it was different when I lived in San Jose, right? But now that they're able to see the lifestyle at the beach and one of the things that they've mentioned over and over again is how much they love that at sunset, everybody stops what they're doing and goes down to the beach. Like, it doesn't matter what you're doing. Everybody goes and congregates at the beach at sunset. And they're like, so nice. And, everybody drives around in their little golf carts and stuff. So it feels almost like a Florida community, I mean, it has a lot of the comforts. You've got your little golf cart that you can go out and see your friends. And like, there are a lot of retirees in my area too. It's kind of a more sleepy town. It's not a party area. So for them, it's like, it's great. There are all sorts of little clubs and Spanish and learn salsa lessons and morning yoga and painting. And like, I mean, there's a really nice community here that they just go and they do some things to get together, make connections. So I think it took him some time and several visits to say like, okay, we're ready to do it. They have no more children in their home. They've got all these bedrooms that they don't need. They've been in their house for a long time. They were looking to downsize anyways. And then they started looking at places in the US and it was like, to get an ocean view home is obscenely expensive in the United States. Whereas here it's a little more comfortable, and like get a little more for your money. And so you pay in things like HOA fees that are maybe much lower in the US, but like the value of your home will increase almost certainly here. That's something else.
Especially in the next 5-10 years, when you look at the popularity of Costa Rica and the growth potential, especially when you look at real estate, land cost. And like you say, it is important. I think you're going to get a better bang for your buck generally in Costa Rica, but there are some places where it does skyrocket, but then there are some places that are very reasonable as well.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Well, before I leave you, is there any final tips that you would give anybody thinking about moving here, perhaps that you would have liked to know yourself before you came down, whether you're traveling or whether you're considering a big move?
I think that there are just a lot of resources out there that you can use now that weren't available when I was doing this. I think having certain apps, having exchange rate apps, having just quick access to like a little toolbox that you can use while you're here or while you're researching, save everything in one place, have like ways to get around and WhatsApp to communicate and like those things, they just weren't available then. And I think they're super useful now. Getting in on forums, listening to podcasts. I am very active on Facebook. For me, that's still a real thing. And so I find loads of information and groups and communities and ways to connect with people and ways to find homes. And like, it's just explosive, the amount of information that's out there that it's all in one place, so you can really look and you can ask questions and you get real quick responses about things. So yeah, I think those are probably my tips, is just to try to be as prepared as possible before you arrive, with tools to use while you're here, but also get a game plan. Like, don't just come down with a rental car. There's way too much to see. And you'll just spend your time driving all over the place. Try to hone in on a couple locations. Spend some time there. If you can spend, at least 4 days, you can't just go and stay one night there and one night there, one night there. No, you can't. It's very true. You're not going to feel for anything. And I do really recommend that you rent before you decide to make that move. And I do recommend that you rent during the green season. Try to come down in May or in July or in early December, like times like that are not peak season, because you're going to get way more bang for your buck than you would if you were to come, Christmas through April.
It's a really good point. And it's not just for the saving, bang for your buck, but also understanding the tropical climate. It's not just all, suns and rainbows all the time. It does rain.
Yeah.
Depending where you want to be, I think that's a great piece of advice. Consider traveling in the transition periods, May, November, because it will rain most of the country at some point, September and October, and it is glorious. You will see less tourists. It's going to be vibrant, green, wildlife, fantastic. But that's a really good one. Think about the time of year. Anastasia, I won't keep you. I know you're a busy lady. Thank you so much for your time. I'll make sure that there's a link, if you guys are watching in YouTube, underneath the video. And of course, contact to reach out to Anastasia if you want to plan a trip, coming to vacation, or just picking her brain for more information, tidbits on living in Costa Rica. Anastasia, thank you very much for being our first guest, and hopefully have you back on the show very soon.
Always a pleasure. Thanks, Adam.
Ciao. Whatever you there.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Anastasia. She is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to traveling and living here in Costa Rica. Guys, as ever, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss an episode. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, let us know what you thought of the episode, or if you have any questions for myself or Anastasia in the comments box below, and we'll get straight back to you. So until next time, for the next episode, I'm your host, Adam Baker. Hasta la próxima.